Hi there. This Thursday we are back to Nervos, Casper, Jasmine, and Chronos. So let's start with Nervos. And in addition to the usual weekly Wyckoff, that's the weekly, and we'll have also the resistance support levels plus a new element that's the Wyckoff in the daily chart, similar to the other earlier sessions I did this week. So let's get started. So here we have just seen another test. You can call that a second test or just test. It doesn't matter what name it is. We all know there are multiple tests, just like what happened in 2022-23. So here, it's natural for the price to go try the yellow line again, but that's not always the case. It can linger around and maybe test the lower point before it goes up. So we've seen this before. So this, after the selling climax, it tested a lower point and eventually gets the yellow line and comes back and tests another round. That was a pretty long period, from June 2023 all the way to October. So almost 4 months time the price was consolidating at that range. So not saying that every time it would happen exactly the same, but that can happen. So if you are going in assuming the project is still healthy, there's still healthy development team, healthy adoption, all that, even if you go in at this moment, like if the long term is going to be good for Nervos, you may have to wait a little bit of time. So if your money it's not something that you can put aside for a longer while, think about it before you jump in, right? So it applies to all the different investments basically. If it's going to fluctuate or stay low for a while and you need your money in a near term, you may have to use that, then maybe that's not worth putting in there because it will lock you in for a longer while. So long story, but worth remembering. And quickly getting into the daily charts. Previously we talked about the downward trend, and the price currently has already gone outside of the trend. You see over the past 3-4 days the price has basically left this downward channel. So well, even if I push it further to the tip of these wicks, right, just to make sure, you can clearly see, especially from yesterday, the price has gone outside of the trend. So given this situation and what I mentioned about in the weekly, there may be a chance that it's going to seek or maybe make some fluctuations between the yellow line, this resistance line at around 0.005 or 0.006, and this support over here at 0.0025 roughly. The upper resistance, there's one weaker one around 0.008 roughly, and the 0.011 cents is the next level. So 3 resistance level, one over here that's more obvious, and there's another one here that's where the price has been at for the past 2 weeks. So there is one level over here at 0.003. I'll keep this line here as well, just on the weekly interval. Back to the daily, what I'm trying to say is, given the weekly, the high level timeline backdrop, the daily price would follow that trend or that constraint and move between these yellow and white line. And then after talking about this, it's now the interesting part, putting Wyckoff tags into the daily chart. So I'll remove this because it's not relevant anymore. So quickly, just borrow some text over here. So I can change this to different color plus, let's say I want to start with buying climax. So let's drag them down. Okay, even within the higher level time frame, the bigger window, there's a larger Wyckoff pattern, right? And in these smaller climbs and stuff under the daily chart, we can try to put in, because somebody has left a comment and requested for it, so let's have some fun and try to put the tags in. So let's say if this was another mini distribution within the accumulation cycle, and this was the buying climax. Let's say if then this was the selling climax. Well, given the daily chart, it's very busy and it's going to be very noisy if we want to determine the Wyckoff pattern. I just want to make sure if those tags are correct instead of just randomly placing it, because there are multiple dips here. So I just want to make sure we've got this long green bar and this one as well, but there is sufficient selling, like quite significant selling over here. This one, it's a little bit better, the green body at least is longer. So because besides the selling climax, I need to find automatic rally. So this seems to be the point, or looks more like that's the automatic rally location to me. And there's a second test over here, and eventually a sign of strength, and a backup LPS, and then eventually that buying climax we first put in. Don't want a question mark, just a backslash. That's it. So that's where I would put these tags if I were to put in the Wyckoff tags in the daily chart. So next is where are we after the buying climax, right? So there was a second test, or you can call this LPSY, it doesn't matter, it's still tests. And it come down, come down, come down. Let's say that's the PS as well over here, the preliminary support that is, and that's the selling climax. Let's assume that's what it is in the daily, and then while we are here at this location, remember even in the weekly time frame we talk about there should be an automatic rally and then some more tests. So the tricky part over here is, now I look at it again, it's very careful. It's very tricky over here. This may be actually the selling climax, and we already had the automatic rally. That's when it came down for a second test. So now it's climbing seemingly. There is a chance that it's seeking for the sign of strength somewhere down the timeline. And remember what I said, right? It can fluctuate before it reaches a sign of strength. So it's not certain. We may have to wait, or if it comes sooner, this would appear earlier, and then maybe a little track back before another pump up. But always remember, if the macro, the weekly, the higher level timeline is coming down, whatever pump we get in the daily would be limited. The surge level would be limited. So hopefully that explains how it works for at least Wyckoff in the daily chart. Is not something I prefer, but some of you like it at a lower timeline, so let's start with that. Going deeper or to a lower level timeline, like 3 hours, 4 hours, or even lower, that's not something I suggest to do, because it's just way too noisy, and the whales are probably not going to work in this manner once it's get to the that level of timeline. So that's for Nervos. I'll move on to the next one.